Most anglers grab finesse baits when the bite gets tough. Zack Birge does the opposite. He ties on a buzzbait. Even in cool, pressured water, it's a shortcut to big bites and fast patterns. It can do the same on your lake if you get the small details right, and he's about to show you how. All right, Zack Birge, welcome in. Excited to have you. Man, I remember when you burst on the scene going way back to 2012. You won the Bassmaster, the Carhartt College Championship. That was like 2012. And then 2014 was the first time I ran into you, and that was at the Toyota Series Championship. Here's this college kid. I'm thinking, oh, gonna take his money. Boom, win that one. And I've you've been rolling ever since. The past 2 years in the BPT, you've been sixth in the points. You won last year on Eufaula. You had a fifth and a seventh, and then this year you back it up again with a fifth, an eighth, a 12th, a 13th, a 14th, and a 21st. So you're smoking, and obviously you can catch them any which way. But you grew up as a power fisherman, fishing up there in the dirt, and that's what I want to talk about with you today, buzz baits, and talking a little before. Man, I mean, you kind of unlock lakes with those, and that's one of your go-to baits. So if somebody was to say, well, I fish topwaters, and I throw a plopper and spooks and stuff, I don't really need a buzz bait. Why is the buzz bait so key for you?
Uh, Man, it's like, some guys have their thing where, like to me, I'm partial to a buzzbait. Some people are partial to ploppers and, other walking baits and things like that. But I've just got, I've just have an extreme amount of confidence in it. Um, and I've said this a handful of times when I'm talking about fishing stuff. There's no right or wrong, you could say, for things. Um, but I feel like, when you put something in your hand that you're confident with, you're gonna have a better outcome. The more confident you are with something, the higher your probability is gonna be of having a good outcome. And I hate going into places and doing things when I'm second guessing what I'm throwing or second guessing where I'm at, or what I'm fishing around. I want to be as confident as possible in doing what I'm doing and where I'm doing it at. And buzzbait's one of those things where you can tweak a bunch of different things with it. You can modify things. You can change baits on it. You can change blades. You can have clackers, no clackers. You can make them squeal different. There's a lot of things you can do to a buzzbait to modify them and, really make it your own thing. And I've done about everything you could think possible with one. And, that's why I'm so confident with it though. And I've seen a lot of big fish eat it, and, that never gets old.
Yeah, that's it's that toilet flush hitting it. It's probably my favorite way to catch them. But and we'll obviously break down all your little favorites on the lures and trailers and all that stuff. But before we get into that, I guess you know, to you do you find fish with it? Is it a big fish specialist? Is it a numbers bait? How would you categorize how you use a buzz bait?
It's one of those things where I really always have one tied on. Unless it's like, you know, I'll probably throw it in the fall up until the water gets to low 50s if I'm still fishing that time of year. Usually we're done for the most part, then I'll transition into other work and things. But I've caught them as late as like the water temperature being 53, 52 in the fall. It's normally Thanksgiving-ish around here where I'm at, maybe just slightly after that. And then I'll pick it up it's really as soon as we start fishing our tour events in the year. We're normally somewhere where the water's already 60 or maybe more. But even if it's not, the water temperature can be 52, 53 again. You catch 2 or 3 days where it's warm, get a little trend. The fish want the heat, they want the sun, and a couple days of warm weather and sunshine will make them get a little feisty. And so I usually will always have one tied on because that time of year too, you've got big, healthy, fat fish that are just ready to do their thing. And it's a good way to catch a big fish. It's a good way to catch a heavy bag. And a lot of people probably aren't slinging it around yet. So I always keep it honest, always keep it on. Um, from about that 52, 53-degree point in the spring all through the remainder of the year until the fall comes back around, and I'm right back to that, you know, low 50s time frame again, and then, by then I'm normally doing something else and hunting wise or something.
Sure. And is it something that you use, a lot of times when you first get to a lake because you really wanna cover it quickly, or is it more once you kinda dial them in, then it's like or symptoms or conditions are like, "Man, I know I can catch a big one or a few extras." How's that fall on that?
Yeah, it's definitely something I keep on as a just a, covering water bait. I'll when I go somewhere, if I'm really trying to get a vibe for what's going on, I'll keep one on and I'll chunk and wind as I'm covering a ton of water. Basically searching, looking, new places I'll go to also. I don't really I don't fish a lot, you could say, when I go somewhere new. I do a lot of boat riding, a lot of looking, a lot of sampling things. So I'll pull into, a little stretch that I think, all right, let me go 50 yards down this bank and just see. And then I'll look for something different, another 50-yard stretch and test that out. And buzzbait, a lot of times, in my opinion, is a great bait to cover ground with and utilize. Like a lot of people they'll say, well, my search bait's going to be square bill, my search bait's a chatterbait, and they're all good options, and a buzzbait is as well. For me, it's something I'm confident in, and I can catch. You mentioned earlier, I feel like I can catch numbers with it, especially with some modifications like smaller buzz baits, different setups. And I also feel like I can throw one that I'm probably not going to get many bites, but when I do, it's going to be, the better quality fish on average.
Well, let's get into the buzzbaits first because and then we'll talk about tweaking it because you get into, I think, conditions and stuff. Obviously, you kinda hinted at it, but let's get to your basic ones. So, like and then just start with, like, the blade because you can get some that, 1/8 ounce ones that or even like, you can get a 3/8 ounce buzzbait and one has, like, it looks like an eagle wing and the other's like a hummingbird wing on it. So starting off with, I guess, weight and blade, what's your go-to and how do you tweak that?
So I would say that my most common size that I throw would be like a 3/8. And that's kind of in general, like 3/8 and a half is probably the most common size that people seem to throw. Um, I lean more towards the 3/8. It's slightly smaller. Normally the blade's a little bit smaller, and it's a really good size in my opinion to kind of counter both wanting to catch numbers, but also looking for a good bite too. And then as like if you were to transition into, all right, I need a kicker. I really need to catch like a 4 or 5 plus. I'm gonna go to that half ounce maybe, or put a bigger profile plastic on the back of it rather than a skirt and try to tweak it to get a bigger bite. And then, a lot of times I'll throw a quarter even down to I have an eighth ounce. I have a handful of 1/8 ounce buzz baits. Actually, I just added to it the other day. I got on a kick with little teeny tiny buzz baits, and now I have a whole box full of them. Um, and I've got everything from skirts on them to little small swim baits, and then little small creature baits too. You could put something as small as like a speed crawl on there or a little menace or something. Menace is a really good bait on there. It's small. There's 1/8 ounce buzz baits. You've got every color you could imagine from shad imitator to, bluegill pattern, something like that. Blade combinations too. You can do something gold, black, silver. You can get creative and powder coat blades, to whatever color you like. A lot like Arkansas River, Oklahoma area, you see a lot of those orange blades, orange kicker blades on spinner baits and things like that. You do the same thing with your buzz bait. Powder coat you an orange, fluorescent orange blade, put a white horny toad on, then you basically have the exact same thing as a white spinner bait with an orange kicker blade. Except you're ripping it across the top of the water around, objects versus something that's subsurface that like a spinner bait would be or chatterbait. Um, yeah, I mean, the things you can do with them and every brand of buzzbait seems to be a little bit different too, and not every single one of them is the same out of the package. So you can get them. The first thing I do is, of course, everybody blow on the blade and spin it and want to hear what it sounds like. You can, make little adjustments to them, make them squeak a little more, uh, change blades if you feel the need to. I don't do a lot of changing the blades. I have in the I have some, but I don't do it often, unless it's just one of those places where I feel like I have to have like an off color blade or something. But I do a lot of. I've even had buzz baits before where I've taken them out of the package and like this one doesn't sound good. I don't like it. I'll make 2 or 3 casts with it. Not going to cut it for me. I'll throw it in the bottom of the boat and I won't ever use it again. It'll go in the trash can when I get home. And then you get some where you've used it so much, they sound so good, you can't replace it. You can't find one that's just like it. You've caught a ton of fish with it, and the dang thing's sitting there just, it's like janky. It's all coming apart, and you're scared the next fish is going to break it, but it keeps working and you keep slinging it. So it's, it's something where but that goes back to the confidence side of things. You get one, put it in your hand, it makes the right sound. You're confident with it, and it catches fish, and that's the one you want to keep throwing.
Yeah, and you talk about running into some of those, sounding right. It seems like some buzz baits, they'll run true where the blade and the everything's in line, and you have some that want to kind of lay over and stuff. Is that and I've actually me personally, I've had them sometimes when they're laying sideways, blades here and the hooks
Mhm.
there when it looks kind of funny. Are you particular about that and fussy with your trailers, or it's kind of you just let the fish tell you, or is there a tweak to is it bent wire? Is that why I'm getting
Yeah,
goofy running wise?
you can shift your wires around and make them run more true and more up and down, more offset. Flexing all that stuff around and playing with it, you can really change all of that. You'll get some that'll you can make, some of them out of the package will pull real hard. A lot of times they pull real hard to the left as you're bringing them to you, which in my opinion, that's fine. I honestly don't have a problem with that because I know if I cast it a certain place, I know it's going to be able to bump into an object. And just like, a lot of things you want to lead it. So you're going to cast past the object to where it's going to run enough over to hit a stump or a log or a dock pole or something like that. And then a lot of times you'll have them where they'll run true, basically straight at you. I don't really like it. I don't like the ones that run like if you get one out of the package or something and it runs and it's coming straight at you, but it really wants to roll up on its side. I don't really like those. I'll usually try to adjust the blades, tweak them, bend the arms around to where I can get it to roll more straight up and down. Uh, but those you don't really get those too often. I don't really know anybody that likes that or would like that. But yeah, that they're all a little different. A lot of them have different bends in the arms right out of the box. They're offset differently, and um, I was actually just throwing one at the last event when we were at Hartwell, and it's a buzzbait that's got a bend in the shaft of the buzzbait, and I was throwing a horny toad on it, and it was actually subsurface, like probably almost 3 inches lower than the surface of the water, but my blade was clicking along right on top. Sounded good, ran right at me, but my horny toad was down subsurface, just clicking along under the water, um, and they were eating it, but they they weren't eating it good enough for me.
And so many variables. I mean, there's we'll get into trailers in a second too, but how do you decide? So you're talking about the sound and you can tweak it to sound different, but you can have it tick the head, or some of those just thunk the head every time around really hard. Some squeal, some have little tickers where they tick the blade. What's your preference there, and when do you go with one or the other?
So I'm not a real big um, clacker fan. So like uh, the ones that have like a blade that the main blade hits, or a shaft with a ball there that it hits. I'm not a real big fan of those. Either like the ones that just straight up squeal out of the package, or I can make them squeal good, or I like the ones that will hit the head, the weight of your buzz bait, like a headbanger type profile, or the ones that have most of them you see seem like they've got a brass ball or a brass like cylinder um, built into the main shaft of the buzz bait where your blade will click that as it goes around. And that's just personal preference. I don't think there's anything wrong with having like a blade that clacks that your main blade hits. Just for me, I prefer the others. Uh, and it seems like I lean more towards um, the ones that hit like the ball or the cylinder on the shaft. I, I, I would probably throw those the majority of the time. And that being said, you can take that and you can literally just bend the blade out a touch to where it doesn't hit it, and you can still have your normal squeal. You can throw one that squeals real good, or if you want it clicking, you can just ease it back and just to where it barely touches, and then you've got that other sound right there, basically on the fly. You don't have to retie, you don't have to change your buzz bait. Um, so that to me is what I lean towards, because if I need to make a really quick adjustment, I can just try it for a little bit. If it seems like they're not eating it as good by not clacking, then I can bend it back and get it to touch again, make a little more noise, and hoping that they'll bite it better that way. Um, and then you've got the bait profile things too. So, like I mentioned earlier, you can go from a menace type size bait, speed crawl, something real small, Z crawl junior, something like that, to uh, a horny toad, or like I'll even throw, a lot of times I'll throw like you know, uh, just a soft body swim bait, like a 4/8 or mainly a 3/8 to like a 4/8 size. Uh, Going to a 4/8, obviously, when I want a little bigger bite, or maybe the bait fish in the area are a bigger profile that I'm seeing. And then you
It's a big
can,
one.
yeah, it's big. It's a chunk of meat that you're slinging, but you're looking for a bigger fish, or the bait fish you're trying to match are that same similar size. And uh, same thing goes down to the small, little tiny swim baits. A 3/3. I think that's about the smallest swim bait style I'll put on, and then down to your quarter-ounce buzz baits, your eighth-ounce buzz baits, getting down to that. That's a little small finesse type profile, and believe it or not, you actually still catch really good quality fish on those as well. So it's not something that I'm going to pick up and throw and say, well, I'm going to catch numbers. One, yes, you probably will. And two, I would have no doubts that you can still get a really good bite with it, especially in places where there's a lot of fish. You feel like you're going to get a lot of bites. Um, it's definitely a good option to still get a big bite, even on a small buzz bait. So I always have confidence that, you can still generate a big bite even with a small bait.
And when you grab a trailer, are you mostly trying to give a profile or keep the bait a certain height in the water column so it glides more or stays up more, can fish it faster or slower? What's the consideration? How do you decide the paddle tails versus the craws and all the different ones?
So your swim bait style, like say you put a 3/8 or to a 4/8 soft body swim bait on a buzz bait, it's gonna have a lot more drag on it. Um, they don't necessarily make them get up higher in the water, like surface easier or whatnot, but it's just a lot more drag. You got a bigger paddle back there, and the body of the bait is moving. Um, so they're generally more of a slow retrieve. They're slower retrieve. Like your horny toad, menace type, Z crawl junior. Those are ones that number one, they're going to skip a lot better. They lay generally. They're more of a flat profile. They'll slide up under docks, up under laydowns and stuff easier, especially a horny toad type bait. Um, and they come through the water a lot quicker as well. So it's a higher pace retrieve. It's everything about it's just faster. But whether depending on a lot of what you're trying to get it around too will determine what kind of profile soft plastic you want to have on there if you're throwing one with plastics.
And then, you know, uh, then you added colors too, and you've got the skirt color, and you can take the skirt off. Colors with blades and trailers and skirts. What's your theory on those?
So I try to keep it. I try to keep it extremely simple. I've said that there's a million different things you can do to a buzz bait, tweaking it wise and this and that. And don't get me wrong, I still think about it. I'll still play with it some here and there. But color wise, there's so many colors out there in the fishing industry that I feel like are just basically buying customers. They see something that looks good and they're like, man, this color looks great. I need to get it. But then you got a boat full of a million different colors and you're trying to figure out which one's going to work best. Get 15 different bluegill different variables that you can throw. And, I'm either black, I'm white, or something in the neutral range, like a green pumpkinish, something that imitates a bluegill more than anything. So I've got a light variation, dark variation, and then something kind of in the middle. And look, if they don't eat that, they're probably not going to bite it. Like there's no other way to put it. They're either going to bite a white one, a black one, or um, you know, something more neutral. And that may not be the case with some of the other things that we do, but for as far as a buzzbait goes, that's what I tend to lean towards. And I used to throw a skirt a lot, um, and I can't, honestly can't remember the last time I've thrown a buzzbait with a skirt on it. I've gotten to where I'm really trying to get it up under docks or skip docks or something with it, so I'll have a horny toad type bait on there, so it makes it real easy to skip. Um, or I'm just throwing some other sort of plastic on there and going down the bank or fishing around cypress trees or something like that. Just to me, it's just more. I've just gotten into that confidence thing where I just put a different plastic on it and keep going. I haven't seen a benefit from throwing a skirt on a buzzbait in a long time. Uh, you have a lot more options too. If you buy a buzzbait with a skirt on it, you're pretty much stuck with that skirt, especially if it's a hand tied one, which I would prefer a hand tied skirt, but then you're stuck with it. There's really not much changing it. Whereas if you buy one that's got a, screw lock or some sort of keeper like that, you can screw whatever plastic you want on there, change the color on it. Some of them you can slide the plastic straight over the head and, you don't see any of the weight. It's all inside the plastic. And, those are really good and they seem to keep the bait on there really well too. A lot more flexibility with it.
And then what about the blade itself? Like you said, the silver, the gold, and then the painted. You see a lot of painted black ones, or sometimes white. What's your go-to on those?
The majority of the time I'll lean towards the silver blade. Um, Pretty much a lot of it will depend on the watercolor. To me, that's about the only variation where I'll go, all right, I need to play with colors. I'll go to like a gold. Maybe I want a little more flash, or maybe I want something like the fluorescent orange, and that'll come down to, all right, I'm probably gonna cut this wire, slide this blade off, slide a fresh one on. That's like a powder coated blade, and then uh, the only problem sometimes with powder coated blades are you'll lose some squeal. Um, but there's ways to combat that as well. By easing some of that powder coat off and getting back to the bare metal. But uh, really silver. Sometimes I'll throw a black. I would say not very often anymore. It's not something that I say, all right, I need a black blade on here. It's either silver or if I'm looking for some more flash or something, I'll go to a gold or, and after that point, it's like a custom color thing. Like if I know I'm in an area where fish are triggered by like a fluorescent color or something a little more.
So you've covered a lot of stuff right there. If somebody was like, man, new to buzzbaiting, I want to try my pond, or I'm going out this weekend for a derby, want to try a buzzbait. What would you say would be the best? Like, well, you could do better or worse, but this one probably going to work about anywhere. What would be your setup?
It'd be just keeping it as simple as possible. It'd be to, a 3/8 size, quarter to 3/8 size buzzbait. And I would look for one that's got a, screw lock head on it. Uh, in my opinion, that's the best keeper for a plastic. There's a lot of different options, but it would be that. And then, just a, I would probably go to a white, soft plastic variation. Horny toads or something similar. That's like about as good as it gets, for a buzzbait. And uh, for just keeping it simple, straight out of the box to somebody new or looking to start throwing one, you know, quarter, 3/8 silver blade with a white profile plastic on the back and chunking line.
And then are you going braid or mono, or what are you throwing this on, and what's your rod and reel setup?
Pretty much all the time I'll throw it on 30-pound braid.
Okay.
I throw it on a 30-pound one. I feel like 30 I'm not cracking the fish like I would a frog or, if I were punching a mat or something, it's not that really hard crack. So I don't feel like you need 50 or 65-pound braid. I don't like throwing it on I don't like throwing it on fluorocarbon. I don't like throwing it on mono. I can't even remember the last time I've thrown mono, but I'm throwing it on 30-pound, um, super braid from Yo-Zuri. To me, it's strong. It's what I'm confident in. It casts phenomenal too, so I can make real long cast. If one eats it at the very end of the cast, I could still get a good hook in them. Um, and I'll throw my buzz bait the majority of the time. And I actually learned something new this year. I tied one on a rod just to play around with it, and it actually worked out really, really well. I usually throw it on 7.3 all-purpose type rod, so it's like a medium heavy rod, good all-purpose rod. You can pick it up. You can throw a frog on it. You can throw a buzzbait, spinnerbait. You can flip with it. Lighter stuff. Drag a jig with it. It seems in the past that's been like my favorite go-to setup. Alpha Angler Zilla is the one I was referring to, and that's been my go-to rod. Um, I tied it on a rod this year, back at Santee Cooper this spring. I missed day one for NPFL event. I was in a hurry. I left BPT at Lake Murray to go to the NPFL in Santee Cooper. And I got there the night of their first day of competition. I missed it. And I was like, man, I'm just going to rig 4 rods up real quick. And then I'll go fishing in the morning. And as I'm fishing, I'll tweak things and try to figure it out. Well, I tied a buzzbait on the uh, Alpha Angler Mag Rebound, which is their big crankbait, or their big crankbait rod. I'll throw chatterbaits on it as well too. The rod it's got a ton of power to it, but it's not stiff. It's got a lot of give. Um, and it's the same thing, 30-pound braid. I was throwing it around cypress trees and all kind of vegetation, and I had like just shy of 25 on day one, and just shy of 25 again on day two. And the first day I caught them on chatterbait, and the second day I caught every one of them on a buzzbait, and it was on that rod. And after that day, I was like, man, this rod worked out really well. Like I was still boat flipping big ones. Um, had it could support the fish. It had plenty of power for it. I was able to really like pick my cast around trees and in between cypress trees there really well with it too. So, um, that was an eye opener for me. And I've since thrown it a lot on that same setup. So, um, that would be my 2 go-tos, or one and like a 7.2 to 7.4 all-purpose type rod. And, this rod I've transitioned over to this year, which I threw it a lot, is the Alpha Angler Mag Rebound. And, it's designed for big crankbaits, but it actually works really well with buzzbaits and chatterbaits also.
It just has so it has more of a soft tip than the other one?
Yeah, it's
Get it a little better maybe?
Yeah, it's they definitely get it. They get it good before you drive them. The good thing about that rod is it's still got enough power to it where, like I caught 2 there at that event that were right at 7 pounds, and both of them on a buzzbait. And I think I posted a video on social media too, when you can hear the line, when the fish ate it, you could hear her eat it, and you could see the rod load up, like, and the fish just it dang near took me to school, but it handled her really well. And then I got her up next to the boat and got her buzz, and it started clicking to me because that was like the first bite I got with it on that rod. And I was like, man, it's one of those things where like it all happened fast. And as I'm fishing, looking for my next bite, I'm processing like how the fish bit, what she bit around, how the rod handled it, and everything was starting to click on that. And I caught a bunch more fish on it that week, and I've since caught a lot of fish on it. And it was a really good setup. I really like throwing it on that.
And so when you're getting those big fish to bite it, is it one of those that you're kinda just reeling into them and kinda sweep set, or you wanna let them have it for a second until you feel contact, or you like, "Dude, the second he gets it, I'm hammering," or how you doing it?
Yeah, so I'd say most of the time, like what I do is I'll be reeling, winding the buzzbait along, and the fish will eat it, and I'll lean into them. It's not like a crack like you would, like a frog hook set or, maybe a jig or something where you might have a little slack. You've got tension on it. So when that fish eats it, you can immediately tell by the weight of the fish, like if she's got it, one, because you feel her right off the bat, or two, by having a rod that's got a little bit of tip to it, she's gonna most likely get it. Unless I've seen it a few times where they get in a mood where they come up and they try to just blow through it or eat it, where they bump it out of the water or something. And it's so hard for me not to set the hook. So I have this uh, basically habit of I'm gonna swing anyways, whether she's got it or not. But it's normally like a 1 second type deal. Um, that's just kind of the habit that I have with it. But it's a constant whine. You see the bite or hear the bite, and then you got like a slight pause, and then you lean into them. Not a crack and like a buzzbait's gonna zip past my head type of deal. It's sort of like, oh man, she missed it. And the bait, I may pull the bait like 3 or 4 foot, and I'll reel it back in real quick, get it over there if she did miss it. Most of the time they don't. They've got it. And then of course when you're throwing it on like a 30-pound braid with a rod that's got good power behind it as well, you're as soon as it loads, like it's driving that hook, so you're gonna get them pretty good. I've got a lot of confidence with that setup and that type of hook set with them.
Yeah. And then in terms of, some guys, and I'm guessing you probably do both, sometimes you see guys just creeping that thing. I mean, it's like painful how slow they have it on top. Other times, I mean, you can scream it, make it squeal and tick going
Mhm.
across the surface. Do you do both? What's your favorite, and when do you do one or the other?
I have done both. For instance, when I was at Santee this spring, I was throwing half-ounce buzzbait, and it had a big profile gold blade on it. It was dark out, overcast, spitting a little bit of rain, and the water was in the 50s. But these fish were up there where they needed to be. But it wasn't a fast pace. I may have popped it a few times just to make it, try to get a little reaction out of them. But the majority of the time with that bigger blade, it was just a slow, um, good squealing buzzbait. It's got such a the blade was big enough on there where you really couldn't reel it too fast because it just wasn't function at that point. Like it had its perfect rhythm and sound and everything at a slow speed, and that's what you wanted. And I've done it too, where like up north, a lot of times I'll throw a small buzzbait and I'll just be zipping as fast as I can around stuff and reeling fast. And that oftentimes is with a smaller buzzbait, the 8th ounce ones. I fished a couple Forest Wood Cups my rookie season and a couple years following that where we were at a Watchtower. There was one at Hamilton. In those places, it's like a wolf pack scenario. You'll cover a mile of bank and not get bit, and then all of a sudden you'll go in a pocket and you'll catch 3 pounder on this side and a 3 pounder on this side. And when I was there in those particular tournaments, I was making long, long, long casts long casts as I could make, and I was burning it. Like I was burning my buzz baits as fast as I could, honestly. And all of a sudden, like when they ate it, there was no mistake. They would crack it. And I think a lot of times there is when it's coming by them or you bring it by a little group of fish that may be cruising down the bank, it's a total reaction thing in that scenario. And the faster, more erratic you can make it, I think it triggers them better. And they're not going to come up and, second guess it And places where the water was gin clear, like they're not going to come up and last minute peel off of it because something didn't look natural to them or didn't look right. They're just going to blast it, and that's what we want, right? We want bites. We want to generate bites, and um, every place you go, every scenario you face, there's a different way you're going to have to click that buzzbait along, and those are just a couple examples of different scenarios.
Yeah, and if you're missing ones, they're coming up and you've had them kind of consistently start to swat at it and miss it. So it sounds like you are going to speed it up if you're going slow, or have you seen times where it's like, oop, I got to go just painfully slow to make them bite
Yep,
and get it.
yep. That's going to come down to when you get to a body of water, you get to a place and you kind of start dialing in. All right, I've missed a couple. Let me change maybe the size. I'll change the size a little bit. You're still missing them. All right, let me change the color and see if that makes a difference. You're still missing them. All right, let me change a profile or the speed. Let me try something that's going to be a lot slow. I can reel a lot slower, but still get the same sound, and maybe they'll eat it better that way. That totally comes down to in the moment where you're at, letting the fish kind of tell you what's going on. Um, I've seen it change day to day. I've seen it go from they want it slow to the next day you just normal speed, or you're actually burning it, or you may be a little more erratic with it, or day one you bump it off of a dozen trees, you might get a bite. The next day you bump it off of a dozen trees and you get a dozen bites. Um, More reaction versus not so much reaction. There's I can't really say there may be like a weather pattern situation that I would say you might get less bites on a buzzbait maybe after a front or something, but uh, as far as changing a cadence to make them bite it, or if you're missing them to get them to commit to it better or get better hookups, that would come down to more of a let me change profiles a little bit. Let me try a couple different colors, and then I'll change up, my retrieve and really see with those if there's a way to get them to eat it better. Uh, and a lot of times it could just be a slight weather change. And you don't really notice it right off the bat, but eventually it makes sense. You figure that out. Then the next day they may go back to cracking it again.
And if you have a day where it just seems like, man, they kind of want it, but they just don't quite want it, and you've had 3, 4 of those. You went through different baits, you can't get them to do it. Is that something that you're like, man, if that's the case, I can switch to a bladed jig, and I typically get those, or uh, the, wacky, or is there something like, well, it's a spinnerbait day because they just don't quite want the surface, or
Yeah.
what's kind of your change up?
So for me, that is going to like a bladed jig. You were spot on with that. That's when I switch out. It's like, you can do a lot of things with it. You can modify a lot, but there's only so much you can do realistically, right? To make a fish bite. Like at some point you're out of options, you're out of ideas, and you're out of things that you can try to get one to commit. So then you kind of got to scrap it. You put it down, you pick up another rod. And when I transition off of a buzzbait to another option, um, it's going to a chatterbait. Like that's my go-to when I'm going from a buzzbait to something else. Um, I, there's places you go where spinnerbait fills that role, chatterbait fills that role, and for me, it's a confidence thing, right? So I'm back to the what I have confidence in, and that tends to fall more towards the bladed jig and a few different colors and stuff with that. But that's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down and get into and have this same conversation. And I've got into the dang JDM kick on stuff, and I've gotten all kind of little custom things and playing with variations of all kinds of stuff. So even with the buzz baits, so yeah, we're still learning every day on all this stuff as well. So like I said earlier too, there's no right or wrong to it, but there's definitely something. There's a more confidence factor. What you're more confident with, uh, the presentation that you're more confident with doing, and things like that. So that's what I tend to lean more towards. What I'm confident with. And when I do exhaust all options with a buzzbait, that's when I'll transition to like a chatterbait or something.
So what's the flip side then? Are you throwing a chatterbait at someday, and all of a sudden when you start seeing them the second it hits the water or it's coming, I mean, is there a tell to like, dude, I'm getting him good on the chatterbait, but I know I could kill him on a buzzbait.
Yeah, if flip rolls on that and you go from chatterbait to a buzzbait, or I'm thinking maybe they'll eat a buzzbait, that's to me, that's generally something that I'll figure out in the morning sometime. I'll just start off the morning throwing a buzzbait, and look, if they're gonna keep eating it all day, I'll keep throwing it to them all day. If it comes to a point when the sun came out, all right, I might see them flash on it a couple times but not get it, or I'll see one come out from a dock but not get close to it, or whatever object you throw it by. Um, then that's when and they're not eating it, obviously, that's when I'm gonna try something else, and then, if you skip a chatterbait around it, you start getting bit. Obviously, I'm gonna keep throwing that the rest of the day, or, until that changes. But, um, yeah, if it's a point where, and it may be something too where it could be early in the year, early spring, water's cool still, but fish are, they're heavy pre-spawn fish. They're up shallow. They're up, you're fishing maybe like the Arkansas River or body water where generally you catch them shallow. And yeah, you skip a bladed jig up next to a stump or lay down, and like as soon as you click your reel, engage, the fish already got it, or your line's already swimming off or something that quick, then hey, that fish will probably eat a buzzbait. I mean, it obviously bit the bait when it touched the water. So, uh, hey, I'm gonna throw a buzzbait around and see if they'll eat it. And you catch a lot of big fish on chatterbait, catch a lot of big fish on spinnerbait. In my opinion, you've got a better chance of catching a big one on a buzzbait. So if they're eating it that quick when it hits the surface or as soon as it breaks the surface, then hey, why not try a buzzbait around and see? You might not get as many bites, but your overall quality could be better. Um, and that's just that's like the whole fishing thing is you're never dead set on something. You never need to lock in that hard on one particular thing because, uh, you know, a minute adjustment could be a deal that either makes you or breaks your whole tournament, just by something simple.
And then it sounds like you've used them in all of them. I mean, you can use a buzzbait going down bare banks and covering water. You can fish it, skip it around docks, and then throw it around laydowns, almost like a spinnerbait or skipping. And then obviously we haven't really covered much with vegetation too, either thick or kind of round, small little clumps. What do you think it really excels in one versus the other, or it's just you kind of adapt and it'll work equally well in all of them?
Um, I really like throwing, uh, um, I really like throwing buzz baits around some sort of hard structure. It doesn't matter if it's a dock, laydowns, stumps, rock, anything like that. I prefer to throw it around that stuff mainly because, um, obviously it's a target, but you can bang it into it. You can reel it right past it, get it close. You can deliberately hit it as hard as you can. Versus like, throwing it around grass and pads. A lot of times it'll just, it gets wadded up in some of that stuff. You'll get a random piece of grass that'll load up in front of the blade. You can't get it off while you're retrieving it. So your cast is kind of over with. You reel it in, get it off, and get back in the water as quick as you can. Not to say I wouldn't or I don't throw it around that stuff, but you have to be you have to pay a little more attention, as far as your retrieve of your bait, not letting it get in that grass and bury up, or you know, it, and some buzz baits are different too. Some you can reel right through; it's not a problem. But there is a good majority of them that, man, one blade of grass wraps up in front of your blade, or gets between, the back end of your blade and the corner where it turns, and it changes the whole sound of it, changes the way it drags through the water. It can become a pain real quick. So, I'm looking more towards a hard object of some sort to throw it around most of the time.
And say it's a lay down single stump, it's the corner of a dock, and you said before you like banging into it, but do you wanna put it, do you like a long runway before you wanna throw it 50 feet past and have it coming up to it, or you wanna land it 2 feet behind and just kinda burst onto the scene at that hardcover and then hit it?
Generally I'll try to throw it, if I have room, um, you know, 5 or 6 foot past the object, just far enough past it, I can get it up and get it going the way it needs to be and bring it by it. And a lot of times I'll make 3, 4, 5 casts of the same object, you know, just and prime example, my rookie season when we went to Ouachita, I remember it clear as day. It was the last day that I was fishing. I was fishing flats with stumps and root wads out. I was throwing a buzzbait with a toad on it, and I'd made no less than 11 or 12 casts of this one stump as I'm coming up. Started making casts to it when I was a long way, wasn't getting bit, and as I'm going by, I was like, "Man, that stump looks good. Like, there has to be a bass bite." And I literally just backhand my buzzbait back over to it as I was going to another one, and I get it in gear, and I'm coming by it, and like a 3-pounder eats it. It had to be the 12th or 13th, maybe 14th cast that I made to one stump as I was going by it, and I caught a good fish. But where was that fish the other 12 casts? Like, she obviously didn't just swim up there. She had to be around it somewhere, but one of those casts triggered her. It might have been the angle it was coming by it or something. So very seldom do I make like one cast with a buzzbait, and if I don't get bit, I write it off. I'm like I tend to look for an object, and I'll make 3 or 4 casts to it, usually at least, before I go to another one. I say 3 or 4 casts. It could be maybe going down the bank pretty quick, but I'll make a long cast to it as I'm coming up. I'll make a shorter cast as I'm coming up, and then I might skip down a lay down, make it come the whole length of it as I'm going by it. One of those 3 or 4 casts, hey, if there's one there, it should probably eat it. And if you don't get bit, it's a good chance you're either not eating buzzbait that day and you probably shouldn't be throwing it, or there's not a bass there. So that's generally how I approach like an object, how I cast to it, as I'm fishing down the bank or whatever stretch I'm going down.
Yep. Let's talk conditions just a minute. Wind, a lot of times it turns on chatterbaits, a lot of bites, but do you get to a point where if you get too much chop on the water where you kind of feel like you lose the effectiveness of the buzzbait, or are you fishing in the big old surfing waves coming into the bank?
No, I'll put it down. It's like anything else. You get a certain chop on the water, and it becomes kind of a challenge to even work it. There's a pretty good line too when you're using it. Like, all right, it's almost too rough. Like, I probably should change it up, do something different, or maybe just slide around the corner into another little place that's a little more protected. If I feel like they're eating the buzzbait really good, but it's windy, and some of the places I really wanted to fish are in the wind too much, or maybe the wind changed a little bit and it's just almost impossible to use it. I'll slide around a little bit further and try to get out of it and keep throwing it if I've got that confidence to where like, hey, I know they'll still bite it. I just need to find a little more calmer areas or just get that chop down a little bit to get bit. But like anything else, too much wind and it does become impossible. And there's times when you can't get out of it. There's no way to get around it. So at that point, you kind of got to put it down and go to something else. But yeah, I'll generally just look for a place that I could maybe slide in a little further, maybe get around the corner somewhere it's a little slicker, and get back in the right water to throw it.
And I'm guessing probably overcast days, low pressure days like that are probably a little more favored. Or or there's a sun when you can have shade lines and stuff. Is that better? Or maybe you just like fishing in the sun? What's your
You,
take on
you can
that?
you can definitely catch them good in the sun. Shade lines, when the sun's out, a lot of times they're looking for shade. They'll get under the docks, they'll get under a lay down. They'll, get on a bluff wall over here where you can go down in the middle of the day and keep throwing it. That kind of falls back to the area, might be the lake you're fishing, the river you're fishing, the scenario that's going on right in that moment. There's days like back in, I think it was March, might have been last week of February. We were at Santee and it was by no means was it warm. Uh, it wasn't cold, but it wasn't like, hey, shorts and t-shirt type weather. Let me throw a buzzbait around. It was one of those overcast, dreary days. The wind was blowing hard, but you could get in these little protected areas. Water was in the 50s. It was like a kind of a mild sprinkle. Uh, it just, you just had that feeling like, hey, I feel like I could catch a big one on a buzzbait, and they were eating it. I mean, good. And it was like, it was one of those days where it was dark enough you couldn't wear sunglasses too. You know what I mean? Like one of those days. I really like fishing it in those type of scenarios. A lot of confidence with it. But then I've also had days where the sun's been out, it's been bright, barely a breeze, if at all, and I'm making as long a cast as possible, and I'm burning as hard as I can, and you'll trigger a reaction to get a bite. Um, kind of Kinda just gotta keep it honest with that stuff, like, try it. If they're not eating it, you're gonna know. Like, you're not gonna keep throwing it, keep throwing it, keep throwing it without getting bit. You're gonna do something else, but, hey, it's always good to keep one on. It's always good to have one on the deck ready to go, pick it up, throw it a little bit. If they're gonna eat it, they're gonna let you know about it.
And I'm kind of curious, you're fishing a lot of pounded fisheries, areas where guys are around good areas. Is it something that you kind of have to have some clean water to be able to fish it? I mean, just not a lot of pressure, or is it something that a lot of guys don't throw it, so you can go in a crowded lake and go behind where everybody else is throwing shaky heads, and all of a sudden, stroke them on it?
Yeah, it's something that, I'll never look at it and go, "This, like, gets too much pressure for me to eat a buzzbait," you know? And I'll fish release fish areas with it. Um, it's just a bait that I have an extreme amount of confidence with, and even on these highly pressured places, um, places where they don't generally bite good during the daylight in the summertime. And they're normally like, you know, they have I'm sorry, nighttime tournaments because the fishing's so tough in the summer. There's so much boat traffic riding around, people skiing and all that. Look, that's a good time to make a really long cast with it, burn it, be erratic with it, trigger those fish to eat. Um, and then, like you mentioned a minute ago, places where you're like, oh, I need to throw a shaky head. I'm still going to try a buzzbait too. Especially if it's somewhere I don't really have a lot of knowledge about. Obviously I'm going to throw it in the morning for a while. If they're biting it, great. If they're not, it's probably not a reason to keep throwing it the rest of the day. But it's definitely something, like I've said before, I'm going to have it on. I'm going to at least give it an honest effort.
Yep. All right. Well, I got one more question for you. I want to ask on mistakes and what you've seen with that. But before we get to that, for those that want to follow you on social media, keep up with Zack Birge. Where's the best place to find you?
Uh, Facebook and Instagram, Zack Birge Fishing, ZB Fishing on Instagram. I'm on both of those. I'm on them a lot, so it's usually it is me commenting back and answering messages and stuff. So if you got any questions or anything, feel free to shoot me a note on those.
Good deal. And then, like I said, mistakes. The biggest thing, either the mistakes you'd say the biggest mistake people make with it, or times where you weren't catching them or a buddy was catching them, and then you made a switch. All of a sudden, the biggest thing that like it ended up being like, man, this is the mistake or the adjustment I had to make, and all of a sudden I got him to eat.
Yeah, yeah, and I've seen both of that happen. Probably the biggest mistake would be putting one in your hand and just going with it without considering like adjustments and, hey, let's try this one for 15, 20 minutes. We don't get bit. Let's try a different profile or different bait, a different soft plastic on it, or maybe downsizing or upsizing. Just putting one in your hand and locking it down without considering the adjustments or just making some adjustments, I would say is probably that's probably the biggest downfall to it, or would be. And then this is as good as an example as I can give you. When I was in college, I was fishing a deal in the fall, right after, it was like the week after Thanksgiving on Grand Lake. It was cool. Water was cool. It's 52, 53 degrees. I remember it like it was yesterday, um, because it was an eye opener for me. Blake and I, we were fishing our club qualifier thing up there, and we had like 10, 11 pounds. Middle of the day goes by. We're like, man, where'd these fish go? Traditional, or, the normal, man, practice was good. Today sucks. Uh, and we're in the back of this creek, kind of in the back of it. And we're going by a pocket. And I kept looking over in these little bitty cuts, and there'd be like bait balls that they just looked like they were rolling under the surface. Not a surface activity, not a breaking fish here and there, but like it would look like a ball of bait it was just like it was just turning in the water. But you could see the water would like boil. I was like, man, there's got to be something pushing this bait around, or there's something going on the surface that we can't see, for that bait to be doing what it was doing. And as we're going by, I told Blake, I said, hey man, just bomb your buzz bait straight down the middle of this gut and see what happens. And sure enough, there's some bait back there doing its thing, and probably some fish around it. As soon as he gets that buzz bait over it, gets a bite. It was a good one too. It was like 4-pounder. It's what we were looking for. Gets in the boat. I'm like, heck yeah, maybe this is the deal. So we keep fishing. He keeps throwing that it was a black neon buzzbait, black, red flake, silver blade. Keeps throwing it, gets another bite, gets another bite, gets another bite. I'm like, all right. And we're constantly culling. I'm like, well, shoot, let me tie one on too. And I'll throw to this bank over here on this side as we're coming in and out of these little cuts. And I just grabbed a black blue one. This first one I saw that was dark color, I picked it up. It was kind of an overcast day. Tied it on. I'm fishing, fishing, fishing. Literally the exact same buzzbait to the T, minus the skirt color. His was black neon, mine was black blue. I'm not getting a single bite. He's still catching them, right? And now we're throwing, like, I'll throw into a place, he'll throw right behind me. I won't get bit. He will get bit. So it becomes obvious that, hey, they don't want black blue, they want black neon. So I cut the skirt off, because that buzzbait had a hand tied skirt. Cut it off. I'm digging through looking for anything I can find that's black red flake. And I found I don't know, it was like an old spinnerbait or something I had in there, or jig, it had black, it had a little bit of red flake in it. Pulled it off, put it on the buzzbait. Like my third cast, I catch a big one. I'm like, all right. So that's an example of like a very minor color change that could make a drastic outcome difference in an event, a day on the water or whatnot. And it's funny, we were running out of the creek, and I was like, man, let's stop on these tires, just make like 2 casts. And jumped up on the front of the boat, bombed the cast up there, caught like a 5.5 to make our last call, or our last good call. And we went back and just completely blew them out of the water, that deal. And I can visually sit here and remember almost every bite that I got on that buzzbait that day, and remember that scenario where that minor change made such a drastic difference. But yet, it's so simple. Like, literally, you're going from black and blue to black neon. Like, the difference in some flake in a buzzbait made the difference. And it's crazy because, we were young, didn't have a whole lot of experience. And to see that happen, and to see how much a minor, subtle difference can make a drastic outcome. And that's why you always got to be thinking like, hey, what can I modify? What can I change? What can I adjust? It's never locked into one particular thing, because tomorrow may be different.
Well, that's some awesome stuff. Just thinking about it, man, the first time I ever came to Texas, I went with a guide, and like first thing in the morning, he caught an 8-pounder on a buzzbait, and that was enough to get me to move to Texas. I mean, it's the funnest thing, and you broke it down so good here, all the details, and I mean, it's fall right now. I'm excited to get out there. So really appreciate the time. Keep hammering on the trail, and man, you guys need to throw some buzzbaits and use these tips, because man, it's a fun way to catch them.
I appreciate you having me on.